Welcome back to DajibanLife, and as you can see, I'm at the beach right now to get out of the heat. Nice and cool out here, beautiful day, nice and sunny. Charging up my solar panels, or I mean my battery, via my solar panels. And I decided to make this video now as kind of a goodbye. It's a 2-year mark of my DajibanLife, and so here I am again celebrating with the Capri Sun. This is Apple. Oh yeah. For those of you who are new, if you didn't know, I've been living in my van for about 2 years. This is actually my second van. My first one had transmission problems. I mean, I picked it up for like 800 bucks. So, you know, there's obviously issues with it. I got rid of that, or I still have it, but I retired that one and bought another one that didn't have transmission problems. But unfortunately, within the last like week or two, I was rear-ended at night while I was sleeping. And so now this van is pretty much, you know, a big trash can. Not that it wasn't already to begin with, but now it's even more trashed than it used to be. But this is pretty much going to be the end of van life for now. Within the next couple months, I'll probably not be living in here. And so I wanted to make a video about kind of some of the things I've learned about van life, and if I were to do it again, right after 2 years of experience, like how I would go about it. For those of you who are thinking about perhaps living the van life, my first thought about van life is that it's actually it's doable. It's pretty good. Like the amount of money, especially if you live in a big city, the amount of money that you would save in rent is definitely sort of worth it, right? But if I were to do it again, I wouldn't do it in this kind of van. The reason why is, first off, it's not big enough to stand up in. It's kind of like in this middle gray area where you still have to sort of like kneel and sit and stuff. And the amount of square footage you have inside doesn't really justify the size, especially when you're trying to find parking, and also the amount of gas that it eats. Because I average about 15 miles per gallon, and it's like a 35 gallon tank, I think. And so every time I fill up, especially with gas prices at like over $4 these days, I'm paying about $150 per fill up. And I do that about once a week, give or take, depending on how much I drive. But because you live in your van, you kind of have to drive everywhere. And so, I mean, it's a cost, right? Like $150 a week, that's $600 a month. Like you could definitely probably be able to find a room somewhere for a little bit more than that. So the cost of the gas kind of doesn't justify having a cargo van, especially when your space isn't big enough to where you're like really comfortable, and also where you can't really stand up in. Long story short, if I were to do it again, I would probably buy a minivan, honestly. Let's see here. Alright, so as you can see, I just pulled up a quick search on Craigslist, and you can find a nice 2001 Honda Odyssey. It's kind of old, but you know, whatever. And it's going for $6,500. That's at a dealership, so you could probably find it for way cheaper, private party. And here's a Sienna right under it, a 2000 Toyota Sienna for $3,600. You know what I mean? And so if you search around, you could probably find a decent minivan for under $5,000 or so, with, you know, decent mechanicals and everything. You know, you probably have to put a little bit of money into it to fix everything so that it's like super safe. You know, everything's like, you know, ready to go for you. But I spent about 10 grand on my van. My old one, and then this new one, I spent another 10 grand. So I spent about 20 grand on this van. The thing is, like for me, obviously, there was extra costs associated with the van because I like modified it. It has like an exhaust tips and an intake now, and it's lowered, and it's just really stupid things that I did to it that cost money that I shouldn't have spent. Honestly, if I hadn't done all that, you know, idiot nonsense, I probably could have gotten away with like 6 or 7 grand total into the van in order to, you know, live in it the way that I want, which is a lot cheaper, obviously. You know, living in a cargo van, especially like an ugly one like mine, right? You can find them pretty cheap for like $2,000, you know, 2,500, something like that. This particular one I got for less than $2,000, and it only had 90,000 miles, less than 90,000 miles. I think it had 80,000 miles actually, and so you know, it was a good deal. But it was missing a catalytic converter. There was like a lot of stuff that was broken that I had to fix. So I think, like I said, if I were to do it again, I would get a minivan, because not only, like, the cost is about the same, but it's a lot easier to fix, just because it's smaller and it's lighter. And so, the other thing is, it doesn't eat much gas. Like, you can get like 20-25 miles per gallon on it, which, you know, when gas prices are $4.50 or whatever a gallon, that makes a huge difference over, you know, the long haul, right? Especially when you're driving around so much. And so a minivan makes more sense, not just from a gas mileage perspective, and not only just a space perspective, because like I said, this cargo van is just kind of not big enough for real comfort, and it's a little bit too big for like your basic essentials of just sleeping, and you know, what else are you gonna do? Just sleep, basically, right? The other thing is that a minivan would blend in way more in the city. When you're in a cargo van, like, yeah, it might be pretty stealthy and people might not really suspect you, but it's like a 50-50 shot, right? Like, I've been bothered by the cops a few times. Not saying that you wouldn't in a minivan, but I think it's way less likely, especially if the minivan's pretty clean looking and you're not, you know, there's no obvious signs. Like me, I have solar panels on my rooftop on a roof rack, and that's pretty obvious with the max air fan. That's pretty obvious that someone lives in there, right? In a minivan, I think you could get away with just like you wouldn't need a roof vent. I mean, it'd be nice if you had one, but you probably wouldn't. You could get away with not having one of those. You could just have a little fan or something that you could build, pulling air out, sucking air out in a different way. I mean, I haven't done it personally, so you know, I would have to actually buy a minivan and then, you know, construct something in order to really do that. But you know, they sell those flat, like flexible solar panels. Like, all you would really need, if you're not running a fridge like me, you don't need a crazy solar system, right? You just need like to charge your phone and maybe run your laptop for a few hours a day, and you know, just small things, and that doesn't eat that much power. Honestly, you could probably charge your phone up just either at work or out of your cigarette lighter, like this thing, you know, while you're driving, right? That's probably plenty. And if you really do need a little bit more juice, you can buy one of those pre-made like Jackery systems, or they have a few now, but I don't know all the brands because I don't deal with those. I built my own, but I know they have some now. I've seen them, like the Blue Eddy or something, little solar generator panels, and then you can get the flexible kind and just stick them on your roof so it's flat, so it's not very super obvious that they're there. And then you can get maybe a roof rack or something on top of that to really kind of, you know, stealth them out. And then, you know, have a 12-volt system that you can connect your phone to and just charge that off of that way. You know, so a very small, very economical system, especially if you're not planning on living inside your minivan for life. Like, my initial plan when I started van life was to do it for 2 to 3 years and then kind of see where I sat, and then, like, you know, move ahead, because this is something I'd never done before. I didn't know anything about it. I watched some YouTube videos, but most of the people on YouTube, they're not doing it temporarily, right? They're doing it kind of as a lifestyle, like they're van life. I mean, I think a lot of them are kind of not completely authentic either. Like, I think some of them own the vans and they actually have a house on the side. They don't do van life full time. I mean, their vans are like really elaborate and sophisticated. Like, it costed them a lot of money it's like 80-100 grand to build out their vans, right? That's not someone with 100 grand, or, you know, 70 to 100 grand to spend on their van build isn't really, probably not hurting, you know what I mean? Like, they probably have a house somewhere or an apartment or something. Like, they're living pretty well, you know what I mean? For me, the whole point of van life is to save money. Like, you know, why would you live in a van? Why would you spend 70 grand on a van? I just don't understand, when you could, you know, put a down payment on a house for that amount and live way more comfortably. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess you could say you get a house for like a quarter of the price or something, or a fifth of the price, or whatever it is. But not really. Like when you live in a van, there's so many things that could go wrong. You know, like things can break, and then what? You're screwed. Like not only is your only mode of transportation down, but now your house is also like, you know, like you can't really live in it either. If you take it to a mechanic or something, like you're just on the side of the road, you got to get it towed. There's a lot of costs associated with van life. Okay, so yeah, I think I've kind of beat a dead horse here, but basically if I were to do van life in the city and do stealth camping just to work, I would most likely just get a minivan just to sleep in, and then have a, you know, a little bit of something like a small sink or something, maybe just to brush my teeth in. But really, like, even dumping water and stuff kind of sucks in the city, because there's no, like, you know, places where you can go where they have an RV dump or whatever, right? That you know, you're probably dumping your stuff in bushes or in at the bathroom or something. You take your bottles into the bathroom. And that's the thing. Like if you have a 7-gallon water tank or whatever, like first of all, filling that up is a pain, because 7 gallons of water weighs a ton. So you got to be pretty strong to lug that thing around. And then if you have a 7-gallon gray water tank, where are you gonna dump that, bro? Like, you look highly suspicious if you're dumping that out into the gutter. You know, a 7-gallon water tank, you know what I mean? And that's why I opted for a 1-gallon water bottle that, you know, like gym bros carry around at the gym. And I only dump 1 gallon at a time. So my gray water tanks are only 1 gallon. And, you know, judging from my use of, like, you know, making food and washing my dishes and stuff and whatever I need to do, I use about 1 gallon of water a day. That's plenty. And so, you know, if you're generating more wastewater than 1 gallon a day, I mean, you're using way too much water, first of all. But also, second, you're making your life harder on yourself. Like, yeah, if you have a 7-gallon tank, you wouldn't have to empty out your tank for a week, theoretically, right? 7 days, because 7 gallons, right? 1 gallon a day. So weekly, you could dump it out, but, you know, where are you going to go? Especially if you live in the city, where are you going to go to dump out 7 gallons of water? You know what I mean? Like, that's not a little bit of water. That's a lot of water. And so, especially if it's gray water, I mean, I guess there's places you could go on the weekend real quick and do that. But for me, I found it easier just to do a daily dump. You know, 1 gallon takes like a minute, you know, just go over some bushes, dump a gallon of water out. No one thinks anything weird just because you're dumping out old water from a water bottle. You know what I mean? It looks completely normal. And then you're on your way. No one says a thing. You know what I mean? Especially in the city where a lot of eyes, you know, are around you and they're looking at what you're doing and whatever. And then to go one step further than that is that I found that if I'm not cooking and stuff in my van, I don't really use any water at all. The only water I use is to brush my teeth. And that doesn't, you know, I don't even, it's like one, what do you call it? Like 1 mouthful of water is all I need to rinse at the end, all the toothpaste and stuff out of my mouth. Because the toothpaste goes in dry, right? You brush your teeth, you spit out the toothpaste, right, into your gray water bottle, and then you mouthful of water, swish around, boom, that's it, done. Like, you're generating nothing. Right? And as a guy, I also use my gray water bottle for my pee, right? In the middle of the night, if I wake up, like, you know, I'm not near a restroom, so I just pee in a water bottle. And so for something like that, just like a normal, like, kind of a Nalgene bottle, or like a bigger water bottle that's like 64 ounces or something, plenty. You can just dump that out daily, as long as it's like colored. If it's like tinted or something, you know, like if it's like brown, or like the water bottle itself is like a brown color, or if it's solid, opaque, like you can't see into it at all. I mean, I like it kind of transparent so you can see the water level, so if I pee into it, I know it's not going to overflow on me, which has happened a couple times anyway. Which is gross, but, you know, whatever, that's van life for you. But yeah, I would just use a normal water bottle. So if you're dumping out a water bottle somewhere, like, people don't really care, you know, and even if they ask, you just say, oh yeah, it's some old lemonade I had in there or something, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever, if the color, old soda or whatever, you could just lie. Like, it's gonna smell kind of weird, But you try to do that stuff when no one's around and they're at a distance. And like I've dumped my pee bottles and stuff out right in front of the cops, but because they look like water bottles, like they didn't bat an eye. They just thought I was throwing away some wastewater. You know what I mean? And so definitely, if you don't need to cook, like I wouldn't even have a sink in my van. You know what I mean? I would just have some water at hand, like a 1-gallon jug like this. Just in case of I need some water for something, to wash something or whatever. And then you either do that outside, or you have like a little sink that you can buy, like a bar sink, right? It doesn't have to be big, and you just rinse stuff out, and then you have like a 64-ounce water bottle that can catch that water, and then you also can pee in and whatever. That's also your bathroom and all that. I mean, obviously for the number 2, you got to find a real bathroom, right? And so in the city, that should be pretty easy. You can go to your nearest fast food joint, or you can go to your workplace, which is what I do. I just go back to work whenever I have to do the number 2, obviously. And then at the gym, you definitely need a gym membership to shower and stuff. And so whenever I go to shower, I make sure to pump out the number 2, and I pump out the number 2 as much as I can at work, during working hours as well. It eats into the workday, which is nice. I'm not promoting malingering or anything, but like if you gotta go, you gotta go, kind of thing. And if you live van life, you gotta make sure you go before emergencies happen. And then for the emergencies, you're in the city, so stuff is open 24 hours usually. IHOPs, Denny's, whatever. You could just duck in there real fast, run into the bathroom. Like people aren't gonna like it. They're gonna like look at you funny and be like, hey, what are you doing? Like you can't just come in here and use the bathroom, and you go, yeah. So usually if you just like do stuff, like people aren't gonna stop you. You know what I mean? Like it's basically like an alpha mentality, if you want to call it that. But you don't ask for permission, you just do it, and then you apologize later. You know what I mean? Sort of thing. Like if you're about to shit your pants, you know what I mean? Like no matter what somebody says, if you just tell them, look, bro, I'm about to blow up. Like, do you want me to blow up on your floor, or do you want me to blow up in your bathroom? I mean, they're gonna just be like, okay, whatever, go to the bathroom. I mean, some people are dicks, and they'll be like, especially if the door is like locked with one of those coin mechanisms where you have to put a coin into it in order to open it, and they don't want to give you a coin because you're not buying anything at the store. And it's like, okay, bro, whatever, but then you can buy like a stick of gum or something, like a drink or something from them, and get that. Hopefully you don't explode on their floor, but sometimes it happens. You're basically homeless, right? Technically that's what you are. And so you can't really have a lot of a lot of pride when you live in your van. You just kind of like have to, like, people are going to treat you different, they're going to look at you different, but as long as you try to dress cleanly. I mean, for me, this is kind of my normal attire, just workout clothes all the time. So it kind of looks like I'm working out. I mean, I guess I sort of look homeless or whatever, but for the most part, I try to stay looking clean, even though I don't really, I don't shave and stuff. So I probably sort of look homeless. But, that comes with the territory. They're going to think you're homeless anyway. So, that's another thing to kind of keep in mind, is that, you're kind of going to be treated as a lower class of society. And that's especially true in dating. There's a lot of, for me personally, I date women. And there's been a lot of women who, once they find out that I live in a van, they're just kind of like, yeah, no. You know what I mean? Even though that has nothing to do with who I am as a person. Obviously, hypergamy is a real thing, and women don't necessarily look at men for, the character and like their, personality and what they bring to the table. Like, the intangibles, they look more at like your finances and like your status in life and whatever. A bunch of nonsense. I mean, it's the same way with guys too, right? We look at big boobs and fat ass, and we're good, Like, it doesn't really matter what her personality is like. But, whatever, it happens. I mean, but there are some women that don't care about that kind of stuff. They don't care about money, and whether you live in a van or not, they sort of understand, especially if you explain it to them, why you're doing it, especially if you have some sort of plan or goal you're working towards, and you explain to them, hey, look, this is, X amount of money is going to happen, is what I'm saving, and in order to put towards whatever, and then that's, I'm going to do this, whatever. Then, some of them are more forgiving for that. But for the most part, honestly, a lot of people make their judgments based on perception. And you're perceived to be a homeless dude. So, you know, you're gonna just have to deal with it, kind of thing. And, you know, honestly, for me personally, it's not bad. I've learned to get over that. I'm a little older. I don't really give a shit. Women are sort of a lot of trouble for the most part anyway. Most of them that you meet don't make your life easier. They make it harder for, you know, like, usually in a partnership, you want your partner, you know, if it's a 50-50 partnership, like so many people talk about, like, you're supposed to help you, right? But women don't really help. At least in my experience, they don't. They like to take, you know, they take away, but they don't really add anything to the pot, you know what I mean? And so for me, I'm just like, oh, whatever, bro, you know, like, if you don't like it, then thanks for saving me the effort and the time and the money that I would have wasted on you anyway. Because really, this might sound a little misogynistic, but all they're really good for is for, you know, the good old in and out, man. I don't really know what else a woman is good for. A lot of them don't cook, they don't clean anymore, both of which I do cook and clean. They don't know how to fix a car, they don't know, you know, they know a lot about makeup basically and what's going on, gossip. And I don't really care what's happening with the Kardashians, you know what I mean? Like, that's not adding to my life at all. So, yeah, that's just my own personal, you know, view about relationships. So, you know, I would say if you're on your purpose, then van life is for you. But always do it with a plan. Like, if you're only going to be in your van for 2 to 3 years, then you necessarily don't need a cargo van like this, right? It's kind of a waste of space and gas, and the cost benefit ratio isn't very good, right? So if you're only in it for like 3 years, 5 years max, or whatever, you might look at a minivan, just because it costs less to drive around, and it costs less to set up because it's a smaller space. So you can't spend that much money on it. A lot of the reason why I spend so much money on my van is because there's a lot of space to fill. So once I started filling that space, I'm like, oh, maybe I want a kitchen unit, you know what I mean? And I go and spend another $400 on materials or whatever to weld together. Like, it's just nonsense, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to do all that. And after having done it for 2 years, I feel like I could get by in a minivan as long as you can lay down flat and get a good night's sleep. That's all that really matters. Everything else, like food and whatever, bathroom and all stuff, you can figure out, because you're doing that stuff when you're awake. But the only part that you need to really secure is the part when you're unconscious, right? Like a safe place to be unconscious for 8 hours a night. You know what I mean? And in a car, you can't really do that, because even if your seat reclines all the way back, like, sleeping in that sort of position is not the best. And that's why I guess you could do it in a truck, but I don't think that's super stealthy. Maybe an SUV could work if you took out the seats, but SUVs are usually smaller than like a minivan, and the bigger SUVs eat a lot of gas. So I think the happy medium is a minivan that, you know, maybe a V6 if you want to go, you know, crazy with it, but, you know, something that eats less gas, basically with an eye towards saving money. And that's all you should be thinking about, is how to save money, not how to spend it. And that was my mistake. But I don't regret any of it, like I said, because this is a Dajiban, you know, and I wanted to kind of be in that culture over here in the United States, and I had a lot of fun. And so to me, it was worth it, because I just like fixing cars and stuff anyway. The next thing I would say that I learned from van life is like places to park. Right? That's a very a question that I get a lot. And basically, when you're living in the city, as far as parking goes, what you want to do is you want to park where there's people, but then not so many people that they're like outside all the time, right? Sometimes you can get away with it. Like, I had a spot in the middle of the city one time, because it was on like a side street though, like a neighborhood, like a residential street. And so a lot of people would walk by, but because that area was sort of, it was all apartments basically. So if you want to park in front of commercial buildings, even if it's a residential area. Like, if it's an apartment building, that's commercial, right? And so apartment dwellers are not gonna be as mad. I mean, some of them will get mad, but most of them just don't care because it's not their property. You know what I mean? They just sort of live there, and once they're inside their apartment or whatever, like they don't see your car, so you know, why do they care? As long as you're not like throwing trash out on the sidewalk and like peeing in the gutter and stuff, like as long as you're not causing like a nuisance, you know, then they're usually gonna be okay with it. The other place to park, if you can't find like a residential like commercial area, like apartments and stuff, multi-unit places, is going to be actual commercial zones where they have light industrial, like print shops and like metal shops, a lot of mechanic shops and garages, stuff like that, where at night it gets completely, you know, deserted and there's nobody there. Like people don't actually live there. So if you, especially with like a little cargo van or something that looks like a work van, it'll blend right in and people won't bother you. Some of those places are a little bit more ghetto though, so there might be more of a homeless element in that area because they're kind of thinking the same thing. There's no one there at night, no one's going to bother me, I'm going to go sleep there, kind of thing. So you might run into that a little bit. I think the safest place would be like office parks, like, you know, commercial office parks. Like during the day at 6 or 7 in the morning, some people will come in, but they're usually gone by like 5 or 6 o'clock at night, right? And if you roll in at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, like no one's gonna see you enter. And in the morning, as long as you leave by like 8 a.m., if you're working, you have a job, you should, you know, if your job starts at 9 or whatever, you should probably leave by like 8:30 at the latest or whatever. Like 1 or 2 hours, like they're not gonna care, right? Most of those commercial zones is like 2-hour parking or whatever on the street anyway. Yeah, office parks, people just go to their work. They're not really gonna care about some dude sleeping in his van, you know what I mean? And so that's what I would say. And also that something I learned, like it's ingrained in my mind now, is always try to park in front of another car. No matter how quiet the street is. Like the street that I was parked on when I got rear-ended was super quiet. It was an office park. Like there shouldn't be anyone driving on that street, especially because it was a cul-de-sac. It was a dead end. So anyone who's driving in there, like if they're not going to work, I don't know why they would be even on that road. But as I found out, you know, no matter how quiet the street is, you could still get rear-ended, and especially if you're sleeping. And you know, I kind of made my van in a way where even if I got rear-ended, I wouldn't get injured too badly. But I mean, I did hurt my leg because my leg knocked up against my like dresser thingy. It was some metal basically, and I had a thigh contusion, pretty severe one that lasted for about a week. It's a lot better now, but that's kind of scary, right? Like I could have broke my leg, and you know, that would suck. And so always park in front of somebody, because if a rear-ending accident does happen, then they're going to rear-end that person first, and then you're going to get hit second, right? So there's going to be less damage, less chance of injury, just less overall, you know, stress. So definitely, and then also try not to park on a busy street. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but if you park on a main like thoroughfare or whatever, and there's huge trucks and stuff going by, like you're increasing your odds of getting hit, right? Especially in the middle of the night, and when there could be drunk drivers, there could be all kinds of stuff going on. So what you want to do is try to find like a less traveled street and park in front of somebody, and then you're good, you know? Another thing that I've learned is always have a backup plan. And what I mean by that is that you don't know what's gonna happen, right? Like you could get hit by a drunk driver in a hit and run. You could get into a car accident. You could, I don't know, have a flat tire, wake up to a flat tire one day, or like your belt could just snap suddenly on the freeway or whatever, right? Like you never know. You're driving around a car, you're living in your car. So always have a backup plan, and so, you know, always have like a second place to sleep in case, you know, you get the knock on the window and you need to leave. Then, you know, instead of being like, oh, I don't know where I'm gonna go now at 3 in the morning, right? Like, you know, automatically, okay, this spot didn't work out, I'm gonna go to the next spot. You know what I mean? Like I already have it scouted out. Maybe I stayed there a night, you know, in the weeks past. Maybe it's a little further away, so I'm not gonna use that spot too often, but you know, I know I can go there, kind of thing, right? So have a backup spot and a backup to that backup, you know what I mean? And not only that, but let's say your car breaks down, right? then you got to know what, you know, you have a plan of, you need to initiate your backup plan, right? Plan B. So plan A was to just drive around in this car as long as it goes, and then it breaks down. Okay, what's plan B? You know, maybe it's an automatic call to Airbnb in a rental car. So you're already sort of figuring in that cost. So you're not like, you have enough money saved away to take care of something like that. Or maybe it's, you know, you call an Uber to go to the AutoZone to get the part that you need to come back and fix it, right? Whatever it is, whatever your backup plan is, you need to have one, right? Like there's been a bunch of times when something out of the, you know, something unexpected happened to me, like either in the middle of the road or, you know, the next morning when I woke up, like just something wasn't, you know, what I planned for. So the first few times that happened to me, I didn't have a backup plan at the time because I was dumb. And, you know, that caused me to panic sometimes and sort of waste money on things I didn't need. Like I got towed a couple times. That cost a lot of money, which maybe I didn't necessarily need to do. Or I did, you know, whatever. Like I learned pretty fast after the first mistake. So after that, I didn't really panic, even though I had like catastrophic failures in certain things, right? I was still able to work through it because of that first experience of failure. Another thing you should think about before doing van life is to maybe just take like a very basic course in auto mechanics, right? Like if you're living in your vehicle, you should probably know how to work on your vehicle, honestly. And they have classes at community college. There's courses like you can take the basic auto mechanics one and then maybe a little bit advanced one. It's just for like 1 quarter or 2 quarters or whatever. Not a big a deal. They have night classes, and they don't cost much at all. They're probably like a couple $100. You know what I mean? Definitely worth it. Invest in a tool bag, right? Just with your basic tools, so you can, you know, because you can make very simple repairs on the road. Usually vehicles aren't that hard to fix, honestly. Like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to fix your car. You know what I mean? Like usually they're designed in a way that makes very like intuitive sense. You know what I mean? Especially if you know a little bit about like machines and how they work. You know, if you take a course, basically, you'll sort of understand, you know, how things work. And then they're really easy to work on. Even the more complicated stuff. And if it's designed poorly, I mean, there's that. But you can still sort of figure it out if you're you know, decently smart, like average IQ. You know what I mean? Like I said, you don't have to be a genius in order to fix your car. So I would definitely think about just having a set of metric or standard tools, whatever your car takes. Usually imports take metric, and domestic brands take standard, but they'll work with each other. It doesn't really matter that much which ones you have. And then have a nice breaker bar and a ratchet, and you know, whatever else you think of, a screwdriver set, you know, whatever. And you know, look at repairing learning how to repair your vehicle yourself, because you're gonna need it. You don't know how many times I've had to change a belt in the middle of the road, or change my tire, or because something, you know, I had a catastrophic failure of my drive shaft. I had to, you know, and have a jack also. Always carry around a jack with you, multiple jacks, like 2 if you can, like maybe a bottle jack and then like a traditional pumping, you know, floor jack, and maybe some jack stands if you have them. And that's another thing with the minivan. A van like this, the cargo van, is so big and it's so heavy that everything needs to be like plus size, right? Like the jack stands for this van would need to be like the 6 to 8 ton ones, right? Which are really tall, they're big, they're heavy, versus just regular jack stands that you just keep in your trunk or whatever. A minivan, you could just use regular jack stands, you know what I mean? So, and you don't need like crazy tools for this cargo van because everything's bigger. Like you need specialized tools, right? That like you need like a 30 millimeter socket, you know, like that's not a standard socket that comes with regular tools, right? Like it goes up to like 20, I think. You'll need like a special, what do you call it? A ball joint, you know, socket or whatever, you know, that only fits on this van. You know, this is stupid. It's stupid stuff like that. Like a little Honda or a Toyota minivan or a Chrysler or whatever, you're not going to need special tools, right? You could just use regular tools, and it's not going to be that heavy. Like it'll be way easier to work on because everything's smaller and lighter and easier to get to. You know, the design will probably be 10 times better. But yeah, know how to work on your van And the common sort of, I know like a lot of troubleshooting comes with a lot of experience. I know for me, like I didn't know what a bad whatever bad wheel bearing sounded like when, you know, when I was born. I had to learn what that sounded like over time, right, with experience. Just because you would have a problem and then you're like, okay, what is that? And then you would, you know, troubleshoot it and then you figure it out, right? Then now I know, after years and years of fixing cars, I know now, like, oh, a bad wheel bearing sounds like this. So if I ever hear that, that's a bad wheel bearing, right? So some of that knowledge you'll definitely gain as you go and get more experience. Because pretty much everything that could go wrong in this van in the past 2 years has gone wrong. So you have to expect it. So it's better off if you just learn about your car. You know, even if you take it to a mechanic, if they've never worked on, you know, your particular model or your year of van, then you know, like they're really just gonna not care that much. And most mechanics, like I've talked about before, are kind of crooks when it comes to fixing your car. They just sort of make it work and make the problem go away rather than fixing it. And just to get you to come back, basically, right? So they can make more money. At least that's been my experience with most mechanics that I've run into. There's some honest ones, but most of them are kind of crooked, or else you really can't make money as an honest mechanic. And so, you know, I would recommend you just learning how to fix your own stuff. Then you don't have to worry about it as much. You know what I mean? And you know you're doing it right the first time. You know what I mean? Which brings me to, once you've sort of, I think after about 6 months to a year of van life, don't cheap out on your van. Like when you first start, I think it's okay to cheap out on your van. Like maybe for the mechanicals of it, you shouldn't. Like, but the thing is, like, if you're fixing things yourself, right, and you're learning how to, like, let's say change out your tie rods or something, right, like you're not really gonna understand how to do it like perfectly. Obviously you should probably purchase a manual, right, a repair manual for your van, your specific model year and everything, so you have it on hand, because repair manuals make fixing your car very easy. All you have to do is just read and follow and just do as it tells you to do it. It's written so that even like a yokel, you know, backcountry redneck can understand it, you know what I mean, who barely knows how to read, you know what I mean? Like, there's pictures, for God's sake, you know? You can just look at the picture. It's like building Lego, like a Lego thing, you know? It's very easy. So buy the manual, right? And then in the beginning, maybe you could use cheaper parts, like some, you know, the generic part from AutoZone or O'Reilly's or whatever. But once you've kind of got everything sort of dialed in, I would say don't cheap out. Use quality parts. It's gonna last longer. This is the place that you live, right, and that you drive every day. Like your car, if it breaks down, if you're not living in it, whatever, you know. But what I learned is when you live in your car, like it becomes very important that your car not break down, right? And if it does, that it's easy to fix in like, you know, not that much time. So using quality parts is huge. So don't cheap out on your van. On the interior of it, inside, like your bed and I don't know, whatever, like your fridge and stuff, whatever else you have in there. In the beginning, again, since you're sort of experimenting and feeling out the space and seeing what works for you, I think it's okay to cheap out for like the first 6 months to a year. But after that, like if you kind of you're set, you know, with what you want, you shouldn't really cheap out, right? Like, I'm not saying you should buy Louis Vuitton or Gucci, whatever, like a bed or whatever that costs $6,000. No, but I am saying, you know, buy something that's gonna last a little while, right? Instead of having to like replace things just because you bought something cheap and it doesn't work anymore. I mean, even after 2 years, I still have some of my cheap stuff, so there's nothing wrong with cheap stuff. I'm saying start with that, but then once you know, like, oh, okay, this thing right here, like a water bottle or something, or your solar, you know, battery system or whatever, like, okay, once you get the idea of, okay, this is how much I need, this is what I need right now, you know, this is what I want, then don't cheap out on that thing, right? Especially, and then you got to look at the timeline too. If you're only doing it for like 2 years, you could probably get away with just doing the cheapest thing for the 2 years and then just be done with it after. But if you're planning on doing something a little longer or whatever, then it's probably, you know, a smart idea to invest a little bit of money into it. And also think about how like you could reuse it later, right? Like a lot of the stuff that I bought, like even if I don't have this van, if I don't live in it, I'll probably use it somewhere else, you know, just in regular life. So, you know, think of dual purpose, not just for the purposes of the van. And another thing is going to be keep your van clean, right? And what I mean by that is not only the outside of it, especially if you have a minivan. If you have a cargo van, I mean, you know, it looks like a cargo van. Usually people don't wash their cargo vans because it's a work van, so it doesn't matter as much. I never wash my van, but at least the inside of it, I tried to keep as clean as I could, right? Like sometimes I'm working and stuff, and you know, I'm doing things in it, so you know, it looks a little trashy sometimes. But I usually do clean it up eventually, and so always try to keep at least the inside of your van clean, because anytime anyone walks by and looks into it and there's a bunch of trash everywhere, like they're gonna know for sure, like, oh, someone lives in there, you know what I mean? But if it's relatively clean and it just like looks like you just use it to drive, like if it just looks like you're a normal car, you know what I mean, like the stuff you have in a normal car, then they're not really going to like judge you too harshly for it, right? And it'll make your life easier. I mean, I think people will still sort of guess that you live in your van, but you know, there's like a forgiving point where they're like, okay, this dude lives in his van, so I understand why that towel, for example, like me, is draped over the seat, right? But it looks kind of trashy now because I just ate something and, you know, I haven't thrown it away and stuff. But you know, with just what's available, if it was just a towel on the seat and maybe like a box or two, then they're just like, okay, you know, that sort of makes sense. He lives in his van. Like, there's not a lot of space to put stuff, so I get it. You know what I mean? They're more forgiving. But if you have like trash all over the place and like it's really junky looking, then, you know, obviously, you know, people are gonna be like, what the hell, you know, they're gonna judge you way more harshly. What else? And then I think finally the last thing I learned is to not modify your van. I think that goes without saying, but I'm stupid. I wanted a Dodge van. I thought it was cool and fun and whatever, and so that's why I did mine. But if I were to do it again, first of all, I would not get a Dodge van. I would probably get like a Ford Econoline or something, or like I said, a minivan. If I were to really do what I really wanted to do, I would get a minivan, and I would not modify it, right? So you don't want to draw attention to it. Obviously, if it's looking really like rough, you know what I mean? Like if it looks like it belongs in a junkyard, then maybe you want to, like, you know, fix that a little bit and make it look a little bit better so it doesn't look like complete crap and like super sketch, you know what I mean? Because that'll draw attention too. What basically you want to do is just make it just as bland and vanilla as possible. Like if you can, like a beige colored Camry, right? Or a white Camry, maybe that's better. White Camrys are way more common. So, you know, a white Camry, you're not going to give a second look to. You're just going to like see it, and then you're going to forget that it even existed, right? So same thing with your van. If you modify it, you put all these like cool, like crazy graphics and stuff on it. You know, this is not a car show. You know what I mean? I mean, I did it because I'm an idiot and I knew what I was doing. But at the same time, if you can, just leave your van alone. But make sure that it's just working, because that's another thing, is modifying it not only draws attention, but if you change like the original like factory configuration, the design of it, minivans, there really is no aftermarket support for minivans. Like people don't usually fix them up, right? So there's not, what is available is probably not researched very well, and it's not really meant for like performance or whatever. Most of the stuff is probably like adapted. You know what I mean? Like, and there's more people like fixing up Honda Odysseys, I think. But other than that particular thing, like, there's no aftermarket parts for a Toyota Sienna or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, they don't make racing parts for a Ford Econoline van or whatever, you know what I mean? So just leave it alone. If you want to put some wheels on it, I guess you could do that. But even that, you're drawing attention to yourself. That's unnecessary. And so anything to really just lessen the attention that you're drawing, especially when you're doing it in the city. Like when you're traveling, you could be as loud as you want. You can have a pink van with rainbow stickers on it, with unicorns and whatever, My Little Pony, whatever, who cares, right? Because you're traveling, you know, whatever, you're not from that state, and you're making a statement as you, I don't know, look at landmarks or something. But when you're living in the city and you're there every day, like, you just want to blend in. You just want to make it look like like you're one of the people that live and work in that area. You know what I mean? And not necessarily that you live in your van. Like, if someone saw you, they would just assume that you live, you know, in that apartment over there or whatever, right? They wouldn't ever assume that you live inside your van. And making things less obvious, obviously, I think it goes without saying, you know, stealthiness, you know, like I think everyone kind of knows that. And then, you know, that's like why hiding your solar panels as much as you can is a good idea. You know what I mean? People aren't really gonna go around and look on top of roofs, your car roof. Like, I don't think I've ever done that. Like, consciously gone around and looked at people's roofs. Like, if I see some solar panels up there, I'm just like, oh, okay, you know, like there's some solar panels up there. But if you have if you hide them well enough, then, you know, no one's ever gonna see that, and they're never gonna know. Now, I think the most obvious thing would be like wires and stuff hanging out, but you know, that stuff you can easily just hide. Yeah, so I think that's it for my thoughts on van life in the city, right, specifically. Thanks for celebrating 2 years with me, and hopefully, you know, that was some good info. I know I ran a little long, sorry. I have a tendency to just blabber about nothing. But yeah, basically, it's going to be learn, what was it? Learn how to work on your van, right? Keep it clean, right? When you park, look for areas where there's other people. Don't ever park on the street by yourself, right? On an isolated street, park in front of somebody on, if you can, a commercial area, because if you park in front of some dude's house, that dude is not going to like you. Another thing is less is more, right? So if you're gonna go more, then go all out. Get a Sprinter van or whatever, like a Mercedes or one of those, you know, big Ford Transits or whatever. If you're not gonna go all out like that and spend 100 grand or whatever on your van, right? And you're not planning on doing it forever, then less is more. Go with a smaller van, like a van or a SUV, like even like a RAV4 or something, maybe, if you can fit in there, like sleeping wise. You could even try doing it in a car, like a passenger car, if you can make that work. I've seen some people open the back seat, put it down, and then put their front seat down, and then they're able to lay down, you know, in their trunk, basically, you know, to the front seat. I mean, if that works for you, it's pretty cramped, but like really all you need to do is sleep, right? So less is definitely more. Van life doesn't have to, you don't have to have all these amenities like you see on YouTube. It's really just a place to sleep. And always have a plan, whether that's plan A, I'm gonna do this thing for 1 to 2 years while I work my job at McDonald's or whatever to save X amount of money, and once I hit my goal, that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna get an apartment or whatever it is, right? Have a plan, but then also have a backup plan, right? In case things go wrong, you know, you're gonna do, if my car breaks down, I'm gonna do this. If this happens, then this. You know what I mean? Like, if whatever happens, like let's say you have a total loss, right? Accident, then you're not gonna panic, because you're homeless, but you're not gonna let that accident like end your life. You know what I mean? Like, you have a plan out of it. Like, you have money saved up. You're not living paycheck to paycheck living in your car, right? If you're living paycheck to paycheck living in your car, then I don't know, you're doing something wrong, right? So stop buying Jordans or whatever, you know what I mean? So, you know, have the money saved up, right? If you're starting to live your van life or whatever, car life or whatever, like, there's gonna be a grace period of like a month or two. You're not gonna get in an accident right away. If you get in an accident right away, I'm sorry, that sucks. But you're gonna be able to get away with it without anything really happening for the first couple months, probably, at least, right? Before the major failure of something. So that's enough time to save up enough money so that if something were to happen, your contingency fund, right? You have enough money to get an Airbnb for a couple days, or rent a car for a day or two, or whatever it is, for a week, a month, whatever you need, right? You have that money available to you, right? So always have a plan. If you do those things and you sort of follow my tips, then and you're only doing the van life not because you want to live the van life, but to save some money, right? You can stack up like 10, 20 bands of cash like easily in a year or two, You know what I mean? You could save up 40K if you wanted to in a couple years, like 2 or 3 years, because living in your van really doesn't cost that much. Like I said, you could get started up for less than 10,000, right? And once you do that initial investment, you'll make that back within the first year for sure. And then the second year is all profit. You're like, for me, I had to get a second van, and I dumped a bunch more money into it because I wanted to make this one like my nice, like, you know, camper that I can travel in later too. You know what I mean? But if you're just using it to work, to sleep in while you work and make money, so you can save some money to buy a house or start a new business or whatever you want to do with it, that money that you save, then definitely once you recoup your money in the first year, the second year you can save 10, 20K, third year another 10 to 20K, whatever it is. You can easily have up to 40K depending on how much you make at your job. Like, no, even if you make 100K a year, whatever, do it. Why not? You could have 100K in your pocket and not paying rent. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, whatever, your dating life might suck and your overall like health might not be as good as it would have been, but honestly, I use my time in my van. What I do is I go to work in the morning, right? I get off work, I go straight to the gym. I'm in the gym for 2 to 3 hours, right? I get out of the gym and then I go straight to sleep. Right? So I'm not, you know, doing anything other than sleeping in my van, and I'm the healthiest I've ever been, right? Like, obviously nutritionally I could probably do a little bit better because I'm eating out a lot, and you know, they don't really care, restaurants don't really care about nutritional value. They care more about taste, right, to get you to come back. But you know, I supplement it with, like, you know, smoothies and stuff that I can make in my car, and I'm saving a little bit of money, even though I spent money on this buying 2 vans and you know, kitting them out or whatever. I did save a little bit of money to work towards my goals. And if I were to do it all over again, I would really be, you know, focused and honed in on minivan life, right? And really just using it for a place to sleep. It's more stealthy in the city inside a minivan than it is a cargo van, and people are less likely to judge you. It's easier, you know, spends less gas, saves more money, so you can get closer to your financial or professional or whatever life goals. And so I think it's a good alternative to paying rent and just being in this really vicious cycle of having to go to work just to pay rent. Because, you know, you have to work, like, if you have to work like 14 days just to afford your rent, and the other 14 days are for you, then, you know what I mean, like, you're only taking home 14 days worth of pay, right? The other 14 days goes to your landlord. But if you can keep all 28 days or whatever of your pay, right, for initial upfront cost of like 10 grand, I think that's definitely worth it, because you can depreciate that cost of 10 grand or whatever over the course of a year, and it'll equal out to rent. It'll be uncomfortable as hell. You'll have to shower at a gym, and it's just gonna suck, right? It sucks. But after that first year, 100% of what you make goes straight into your pocket. So I think it's worth it. That's why if you plan on doing this for less than a year, I wouldn't recommend it, right? Just stay where you are, or go live with your mom or something, right? But if you're planning on doing it for at least 2 to 3 years, then definitely it's something to think about, so that you can build your business, or you can build your whatever, right? I think it's a good jumping off point, and it's an option that more young people, if you're old like me, I don't think you should do it, because it gets physically taxing after a while. But if you're a young person, it's not a bad idea. It's a decent option and jumping off point to do what you really want to do, because I think there's this thing in society today where a lot of people aren't able to do the things they want to do because they're stuck paying back student loans, or they're stuck paying rent, or they're trying to keep up a lifestyle that they just can't afford. You know what I mean? And in this way, you might be at the bottom of society, right? You're like one step above the homeless. But after 2 to 3 years of that, you don't necessarily have to be. Then it's on you, right? How much you can make of the time and the resources and the struggles that you went through the 2 to 3 years, and how you invest what you saved and then how to, you know, you could dump that into the stock market and just play the lottery, you know what I mean? And you might hit, you never know. I wouldn't recommend that. It's not financial advice, but theoretically you could go all in on, you know, some stock, whatever, and if it 10x's, then you know, you just spent 3 years, you know, in a van, and you just, you know, 10x your money, you know what I mean? On a YOLO play in the stock market. But anyway, thanks for watching, and those are kind of my thoughts about van life and what I've learned in the 2 years that I've lived it in the city. I never started van life to travel or do any of that stuff. It was really just to work and save money and have a little bit of fun with a Japanese van racing culture, which I still don't really understand, but you know, it was fun. So hopefully you learned something from my videos. If not how to modify a Dodge van, then maybe a little bit about how to save money and get a head start. And yeah,